I feel still when I come into the office today, it's like a game. You know, I've transitioned from playing an actual sport with a racket in hand and a ball and a net and a field to really walking into the office every day, and that's my new playground. That's my new training ground.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Andy North. My guest today is Russell Meyerowitz, Chief Operating Officer at Brand New. Russell, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you have an interesting background. You were partially raised in South Africa, and then you moved to the United States. First of all, how was that experience, coming as a 9-year-old over to the U.S.? And by extension, what do you think that gave you as an edge as you continued through your educational career?
I think one of the amazing things is I came from Johannesburg from a very small, tight-knit community to San Diego, California, and just my exposure, increased significantly overnight. Exposure to culture, exposure to different kinds of people, exposure to an entirely new path that I don't think I would have had if I would have continued to grow up in South Africa. And coming to America has significantly opened up the opportunities through growing up into sports, into college, into what I then got into in my later years, that I don't think those opportunities would have existed being in South Africa, which I think is the primary reason why my father was such a huge advocate of wanting to move us at the time that he did.
Well, tell us a little bit about Brand New and some of the exciting things that are going on there.
So we're now all based in Century City, about a team of 32 at the moment, growing healthily and steadily. We're really blessed to be working with a tremendous amount of amazing clients in a variety of different verticals. Stand Up to Cancer is one of our awesome clients, doing tremendous work in the cancer research area. We then also are agency of record for AVP, which is the Beach Volleyball Association. We're just a few weeks out from the start of their season. We're also just launched Verizon 5G Labs website last week. Pretty awesome to be a participating partner with Verizon and what they're doing on 5G Labs and their challenges.
Particularly with 5G, that's exciting.
Yeah, which is pretty, that's just phenomenal.
Some of the things you've built for Brand New include a social press kit, which is an influencer tool. Where does the use of influencers in marketing stand today? Do you feel the authenticity has started to wear off as they become more brand-centric?
Influencer, the way I personally look at the influencer ecosystem is that it's simply another channel. And just like all of our channels, you have to be strategic of how you're utilizing influencers. Influencers is a very broad topic that once you start to unpack the concept of influencer, well, then you start to actually get to the usage and the benefit of what an influencer can mean for your brand, for your marketing initiatives. So I think it's very critical to get past what's just the follower count. I think that's what a lot of people naturally are inclined to go to, say, we want influencers and we want influencers with X amount of followers. That doesn't always work, and through our experience, we've seen that even somebody with many millions of followers doesn't mean that they're going to strike the engagement that the brand needs.
One of the other things you've created there at Brand New was Cause-a-thon, and obviously you've been involved. You have your own foundation for Parkinson's. Talk a little bit about that, and how important is it that for you personally, as well as for other brands, to get into sort of those purpose-driven initiatives?
I think the two incredible, and I'll bring Brand New into this too, because I think it's a huge emphasis of both me personally, but also with Brand New, is that people are everything to us. We don't thrive without incredible individuals around us, but also what's huge part of our DNA is purpose-driven initiatives. I think 50% of our partners are probably in the nonprofit space. And it's always been that way. And there's a true desire to have impact in the work that we're doing. Over the years, where Cause-a-thon really came into play was, we noticed that a lot of nonprofit organizations could benefit from technology, right? However, a lot of the times these organizations don't necessarily have the technology resources,
right,
either internally, or they don't have the resources to externally afford the technology that they actually could utilize, right? It's not necessarily the easiest to get funding for when you're trying to build up a technology team or solve a technology problem. A lot of the times it will become a secondary part to what the impact that they're trying to drive on a day-to-day basis, where that's where the funding is going towards. But Causathon really was, the goal of it was to solve this gap of saying nonprofit organizations have challenges that can be solved via technology.
Is it nationwide, or is it just here in Southern California?
So we ran a few incredible local causathons here in LA. The impact was tremendous. You know, it first actually started off as a way that we were going to recruit engineers. You know, that was the genesis of Causathon was, you know, we want to meet awesome talent. We want to continue to just be part of the community. Right. Let's create an environment that is different than your typical hackathon challenge, right? Which engineers, and we all love. But let's do something a little bit more than that.
Going back to your background, I'm fascinated by it in general, but in addition to being from South Africa, you were a Division I tennis player at Cal Poly and a marketing student, obviously. And during your college careers, you actually started a company around beer pong tables. Yeah. Which is fascinating. Yeah. And talk a little bit about that and how that sort of gave rise to your entrepreneurial spirit.
I feel still when I come into the office today, it's like a game. You know, I've transitioned from playing an actual sport with a racket in hand and a ball and a net and a field to really walking into the office every day, and that's my new playground. That's my new training ground. And then really the cornerstone to then starting a business in college was super fascinating. You know, the college, I think, was an amazing moment of a lot of exploration. You know, figuring out who you are, what you're trying to become, what you think you should become. You know, you enter into college, you know, having to pick a major, at least in Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, you had to enter in with a major. You then exposed on tennis, and this journey of playing this sport at that high level now starts to come to an end, because it's either you're going to finish out playing college and then you're either going to go try hack it on the amateur tour around the world and try make it to be your career. I obviously recognized that was not my career, and so then you start to wonder what is next.
You obviously work with a lot of companies and a lot of nonprofits around the digital space. What do you see, based on where we are now, as sort of the future of digital media? What are your developers and what are your some of the entrepreneurs you work with and the brands you work with? What are they leaning in towards? What are they excited about?
There are always a lot of distractions coming both to our engineers, to ourselves, and to our partners and founders that we're working with. So we've always really been focused on what is the customer or the client or the fans experience. What do they actually need? And I think those needs have always led us down to what should we build. Everybody's fighting for real estate on your phone. That opens up a whole can of worms in terms of, again, the usability and why should somebody download and use part of their real estate for your app, right? Mm-hmm. Versus going the desktop route, or starting to look and understand what should we be building. I think, again, we have always come from the standpoint of saying what is best for the consumer. But again, we're super excited about the variety of different technologies that are out there. I think knowing the consumer, I think what's exciting is the potential of how product in itself can develop based on the data that you have. And just, again, as we're progressing on the technology side, it's being able to create those more optimized experiences based on the data collection that we can get. Whether that is for mobile, tablets, desktop, whether we start to talk about voice or whether we talk about face recognition, all those different elements really just play into building a good experience for what kind of customer based on the data that you're getting.
There's obviously a trend towards personalization, and I don't think we've gotten there quite yet from a tech perspective. Are you seeing any interest in it from some of your clients and the brands that you work with?
one of our partners is building a pretty awesome product whereby it's the idea is that you can have a conversation with somebody in the palm of your hand. So through their technology, you can, let's say, imagine being able to speak to, let's say, a family member who's passed away. And before they've passed, they've been able to record and answer questions of their life, and now allowing members of their family to feel as though they're having a conversation with that individual. Or from an educational standpoint, being from South Africa, imagine if you could have a conversation with Nelson Mandela and ask him the questions that we would all love to hear the answer from him.
One of the questions we always like to ask our guests is there a favorite book, blog, or podcast that you'd like to share with our viewers?
So I've recently been introduced to David Goggins' content, and I think I've been consuming a lot of David Goggins. He's got a couple amazing podcasts with Joe Rogan. Recently got his book as well. I think it's called Can't Hurt Me, and he is phenomenal. I think the mentality, his life story, and how he's been able to go up against adversity, and just his mentality from a day-to-day basis of how our mental capacity drives a lot of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is phenomenal. So I've been really intrigued by his story and his content, and yeah.
My guest today has been Russell Meyerowitz, Chief Operating Officer at Brand New. Russell, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.